One of the most insane plot twists of Game of Thrones Season 8 may have already leaked months ago, and I don't even really know if it's a leak, it's more so a theory that has become insanely popular with the Game of Thrones fandom. I'm of course referring to the betrayal of Tyrion Lannister. When you look at all of Tyrion's past actions, all the mistakes that he's made, and the road that he's traveled to get to where he is at now, you can't really see him doing anything that would ruin his relationship with Daenerys. Whatever happens in Game of Thrones Season 8 that is considered a betrayal by the viewing audience will likely just be a misunderstanding and miscalculation on Tyrion's part. I mean, Tyrion is arguably responsible for instilling in Jon Snow the courage that led him to where he is right now. In this video, I want to speculate on 3 different ways that the betrayal of Tyrion Lannister may happen in Game of Thrones Season 8. With episodes 3 to 6 scheduled to be an hour and 20 minutes, there's plenty of time for murder, betrayal, and everything that makes this show what it is. Now, as always, the lead part of this video is meant to be taken with a grain of salt and is more or less meant for strictly entertainment purposes. Here's your sign and let's begin. Now before we get started, please slap a like on this video as the like goal is going to be 2,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part. Make sure you have notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Also, with as much growth that we've had lately, let's see if we can't reach a subscriber goal of 75,000 before Game of Thrones Season 8 actually airs. Now what really doesn't help the case against Tyrion's betrayal in Game of Thrones Season 8 is last year at an award ceremony, the special effects crew, while receiving an award for Game of Thrones, mentioned that Tyrion will die. Now they said it jokingly, and as soon as I saw this, my reaction was that they're just trolling us. Maybe they realized that we figured out that Tyrion will betray Daenerys, and the showrunners know that most fans have a track record of not believing anything they say will happen, especially when actors give interviews, so they feel like if the special effects crew jokes about Tyrion dying, then no one is going to expect it happening in the final season. I'm probably just overthinking that whole situation. Now you see, here's the thing. In the very last episode of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 7, in the very last moments I should say rather, Tyrion has a look on his face. Everyone, the average show watcher who doesn't read articles or watch the behind the scenes featurettes, they wouldn't know that Tyrion is in love with Daenerys. He has been since Game of Thrones Season 6, pretty much since the first moment that he laid eyes on this queen. I mean, can you blame him? Literally every single man she interacts with on the show falls in love with her from the very first sight. I feel like it has something to do with her expressive eyebrows, or maybe it's her assets. That aside, not only has the actor who plays Tyrion, Peter Dinklage, confirmed this in multiple interviews, but Dan and Dave, the 2 showrunners, have also confirmed this. What I'm getting at here is maybe they're just fucking with us. They know that we're gonna read into the look that Tyrion gives about Daenerys and Jon Snow hooking up, but next season he'll quickly get over it and move forward. In my video from the other day, I actually mentioned, and you can check a link down below in the description to go and watch that video, but I mentioned that Tyrion is the one who was captured when the Golden Company attacks Winterfell. Maybe the trial that everyone is having in the Dragon Pit is not actually because of Jon or Daenerys or a betrayal to them. Maybe Cersei is the one who's having the trial for Tyrion, and the reason why Sansa and all the other Starks are supposedly present at this trial is because they're sitting on the newly formed Small Council in King's Landing. But with my speculation aside, you all let me know what you think may happen in Game of Thrones Season 8. Is there going to be some sort of betrayal from Tyrion, and will there be a trial at the very end of the season? And while y'all are commenting that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the leaks. Now these were sent to me through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at Sir_Hunts. But before I forget, I also have an Instagram. If you want to see pictures of my kitty cats and whatever kind of healthy food I'm eating for the day, go and give me a follow at Sir_Hunt_reviews. Now this first person states that Tyrion's betrayal goes down like this. He makes a deal with Cersei. The terms of the agreement are to feed information on the daily dealings between Jon Snow, Daenerys, and all of their armies. After the dead march on Winterfell, Tyrion immediately sends word to Cersei that now is the time to strike. Tyrion's plan is to have Daenerys whisked away while Jon Snow is captured by the Golden Company. When Jon meets with Cersei after being captured by the Golden Company, Cersei informs Jon Snow of her plans with Tyrion. Jon doesn't believe her, but he is convinced once she shows him the Raven. Jon refuses to bend the knee to Cersei and ends up, in the end, getting rescued by Dany. After the threat of Cersei and the Night King is dealt with, Tyrion is sent to the Wall to help rebuild the Night's Watch. Now, as usual, I'm going to save my thoughts for these towards the end of the video, and continuing on with the next one here, this one states that Tyrion's plan is to trick Cersei into surrendering. The reason why he tells Jon Snow and Daenerys to lie right before he goes and sees Cersei is because he plans on doing just that. He lies to her face in order to goad her into his plan, which if everything goes correctly, he will be able to hand over King's Landing to Daenerys, losing as few lives as possible in the process. Midway through the season, Tyrion starts to realize how great of a threat the Dothraki are if they're left unchecked. There's a moment during the Battle of Winterfell where Daenerys comes pretty close to death, and this makes Tyrion realize that if she were to die, no one could control the Dothraki. And later on in the season, after the Night King has been dealt with, Tyrion plans to attack King's Landing. Just before the attack, Tyrion sends a raven to Cersei warning her. He hopes that she'll arm herself with wildfire, and the way that Tyrion has conducted the battle will leave the Dothraki to be separate from most of Daenerys' forces. He informs Cersei that Daenerys and Jon Snow will be riding in the caravan with the Dothraki in hopes that she will attack there first. Tyrion's plan backfires and Daenerys is struck out of the air by one of Cersei's ballistas. And as if that wasn't crazy enough, this next part gets a little bit even more ridiculous. In the end, Tyrion is tried and chooses a trial by combat. The only person that will represent him as their champion is Jaime. Brienne is then chosen as the champion for House Stark, and of course Brienne kills Jaime, which results in Tyrion getting burned by dragonfire. Supposedly Jaime dies in Brienne's arms. I don't even feel like I need to comment on that, so let's go ahead and move on to the third leak that I want to mention for this video before I start to speculate on Tyrion's betrayal and what he may do in Game of Thrones Season 8. Now, I have mentioned this one before in my video, so I'm just going to quickly summarize, and if you want a full in-depth version of this, then check the link down below in the description and go and watch the video. This person states that upon arrival at Winterfell, Tyrion begins immediately plotting to break up Jon Snow and Daenerys with Sansa. The two of them, after finding out about Jon Snow's true lineage, agree that the Seven Kingdoms would never accept Jon Snow and Daenerys as their king and queen. They both agree that even though Jon Snow and Daenerys will likely be successful against the Night King, Cersei would easily be able to convince all of the lords who didn't take part in the battle for the living versus the dead that the Night King and the undead actually don't exist, and that Jon Snow and Daenerys have now teamed up and are going to invade Westeros, starting with King's Landing. After Sansa and Tyrion correspond a few times in the first few episodes of Game of Thrones Season 8, there's a moment where Tyrion is meeting with Daenerys after the battle for Winterfell, and he starts to mention how he's loved her from the very first moment he laid eyes on her. That part of Tyrion's plan backfires and Daenerys storms away in tears. In episode 5, Sansa reveals herself to be in league with Bran the whole time. She uses all of the evidence that she's gathered in her plotting with Tyrion against him in his trial. There was side details that went along with this plot leak that mentioned the main reason why Sansa ultimately decides to betray Tyrion in the end is because she gets a letter from Cersei claiming that the endgame to Tyrion's plan involved the death of Jon Snow. This puts Sansa in survival mode, and this is the moment when she begins undermining Tyrion by working with Bran. In the end, Tyrion is beheaded by Brienne, and supposedly the scene is extremely emotional, with Tyrion referencing his relationship with Sansa going all the way back to Season 2 in King's Landing. Now, you all let me know what you think about those leaks down below in the comment section. In my opinion, and it's the same with most of these videos, they have a few good moments, but for the most part, they're purely horseshit. Nothing is 100% confirmed until it airs on your TV screens. I do like the idea that Sansa and Tyrion will plot against Jon Snow and Daenerys, not necessarily against him, but a way to sort of break them apart. I don't want them to do that, but the fact that there's going to be some sort of inner turmoil between the heroes makes for good storytelling. That's the kind of stuff that made this show famous. Even though the Iron Throne may be meaningless, the actual game that's played for the throne will not be. I mean, no one honestly thought that Jon Snow and Daenerys are going to arrive in the north, kill the Night King, go and kill Cersei, sit on the Iron Throne and live happily ever after. There has to be some sort of inner turmoil. We know that Cersei's a bad person. We know that any sort of dealing she has with Jon and Daenerys is going to be negative. So the biggest threat aside from the Night King in everyone's eyes is Cersei. So if she does something, we're all going to be expecting it. What we won't be expecting is a betrayal from Tyrion or a betrayal from Sansa. We all know that the two of them are not fighters, so their biggest strong point is going to be playing the game. I always see a few fans in my comment section mentioning how Tyrion's story has been pretty boring ever since he left to go and join Daenerys, and my idea on that is not that Tyrion's boring, it's just the cast that he was put with in those situations felt wrong. We know that Tyrion is a player of the game, and he belongs in Westeros playing the Game of Thrones, trying to position himself in into power or put someone on the Iron Throne who's fit for the job. With him being such a massive fan favorite, I can almost guarantee y'all that the 80-minute episodes will likely wrap up Tyrion's character very well. Now, just sort of touching back on what I said a bit ago about why people think Tyrion and Sansa are going to be the ones to plot and sort of betray Daenerys or Jon in a certain way, well, that's for Tyrion anyway. The foreshadowing's been there. There's been several different ways in season 7 that you could argue are foreshadowing for Tyrion betraying Daenerys. One of my most favorite ones is right when Jorah says that one man, and this was in Game of Thrones season 7 episode 7, one man with one lucky arrow could easily place a bolt in Daenerys and this would end everything. He would be considered a hero, and right as Jorah says this, the camera pans over to Tyrion. And then earlier on in Game of Thrones Season 7 Episode 2, Olenna actually warns Daenerys, be a dragon, beware of clever men. She does almost immediately take Olenna's advice when Tyrion tries to warn her to not go and rescue Jon Snow, so that kind of makes me think that in this final season, maybe she does the same thing. Maybe Tyrion warns her to not do a certain thing, and this causes Tyrion to realize that Daenerys no longer values him as her hand of the queen. Tyrion is going to be a scorned lover in Game of Thrones Season 8, so maybe this causes him to plot against Daenerys even though he feels what he's telling her to do in his heart is the right thing, but she refuses to listen to him. Maybe Tyrion takes it to the extreme and then starts plotting against her in a way that he thinks is beneficial, and this takes it all the way back to what I said at the beginning of this video, which in my mind, I cannot see Tyrion actively betraying Daenerys. Whatever he does in Game of Thrones Season 8 that is considered a betrayal will likely be a massive mistake that blows up in his face. Before I get out of here, I do want to mention that the second trailer for Game of Thrones Season 8 will most likely be coming out between now and the first week of April. We always get 2 trailers for Game of Thrones, and I did see a bunch of people in my comments section questioning whether we would get another one since this is the final season. And in my opinion, yes we will, and it will likely be here by the first week of April. Alright, and with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please, slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 2,420. I do have a subscriber goal of 75,000 by the time Game of Thrones Season 8 starts. Please subscribe and help me reach that goal. Also, make sure your notifications are turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. A super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark. This has been Sir Hunts Reviews.